On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tacova store. So stop by Tacova's Nashville, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tacova's Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tacova's. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Nashville, we're discovering some of Nashville's historic eats with Nashville Scene food and travel contributor Margaret Littman. Some of the places we're going to talk about have been open for over 90 years, and we're done gatekeeping, and we're done eating bad meat. CityCast Nashville is presented by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tacova's. It's June 26th. I'm Grace Fuse, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Margaret, you recently wrote a Nashville Scene story about the updates the new owner of Brown's Diner is making. What drew you to take a closer look there?
I think it's a really good example of some of the conflict that some of these old restaurants have in updating for new audiences and for a new economy. And I thought what Brett Tuck was doing at Brown's was interesting because he had some perspective working at Edley's, but also having a lot of respect for what Brown's has been for more than 90 years.
Could you just tell us a little bit about the history of Brown's, but also just what makes some of these institutions so special and why they matter?
Sure. So Brown's, legend goes, Brown's has the oldest beer permit in the city of Nashville. It's 97 years old. It is in an old trolley car, not on tracks or anything. And it's not fancy. That's an understatement. If you didn't know better, you would drive by. But it has a beloved burger, and it has been a hangout for songwriters for decades. And it's a place that people, I think, love because they know what to expect there. It feels comforting to them. And it's also affordable and somewhere that people can just sort of be themselves. There's a little, to call it a stage is dressing it up a little bit, but there's a little space where they have live music and people love to play there. And it's somewhere they used to kind of refer to it as Brown's rehearsal hall because people would just sort of mess around there. And there's like, no, if you mess up, you start over. And I think people kind of like that vibe.
Can you tell me a little bit about John Prime's association with Brown's Diner?
So John was one of the songwriters who is famous for hanging out there. And one of the things that Brett showed me, the new owner, Brett Tuck, showed me when I was interviewing him is an old Rolodex card from BMI back, when all the studios and publishing houses had Rolodexes. They had a card that's typewritten with John's name, address, and phone number. And then on the bottom, it says, alternative number if you can't reach John, and has a second phone number. And it was the Brown's Diner, still the current Brown's Diner phone number on that card.
It's adorable, honestly. I absolutely love that.
It is adorable. And it's also just such a good reminder of that's how you found people before we had cell phones. You would just know where somebody hung out.
It's just a spot. You just might be there. Yeah, that's so sweet. So just because I'm personally curious, how would you rank the Brown's burger in comparison to other burgers in Nashville?
I think it's a very good burger. I'm not sure it's my favorite burger of all time, but not everything has to be for me. My favorite burger was at another longtime place that has recently closed called Rotiers. And Rotiers now does pop-ups or serves at Bridgestone Arena sometimes. But I loved the Rotiers burger that was on French bread, and it was served with hash brown casserole. That was my jam. But the Brown's burger is very good, and Brett has sort of upgraded the quality of the meat and upgraded the buns, but it is not a fancy burger.
Are people resisting the improvement in meat?
I have seen a couple of comments, yes, that people do not want anything changed. But for the most part, people seem to be pretty happy.
I want bad meat, Margaret. I want really bad meat.
I mean, I really try not to read the comments about articles I write, but I did because of our conversation. I kind of wanted to see what people were saying about the Browns story. And that was one of the things that really jumped out at me.
Totally fair. But how do you feel about it as a concept?
I love it. I think it's such a great example of how you can take something that has this long history and integrate it into sort of new Nashville or where people are. My, I guess, concern with the Rotiers example specifically is one of the things that I loved about Rotiers is you could see anyone there. I mean, I used to go there when I was a Vanderbilt student, and you would see politicians there. You would, close to the hospitals, you would see people walking over from, on their lunch breaks. You'd see tourists. It literally was this level playing field, I guess. You're not going to have that at Bridgestone, just
Right.
by definition of what it is. But I also am a little bit concerned that people who are visiting or new to town go to Bridgestone and they will have a good burger from Rotiers, but they might not understand all of that history.
So if you were going to put a restaurant in Bridgestone that was a local institution, what would it be?
Well, I would love to see some food that's not just their traditional hot dogs and burgers and hot chicken.
Yeah.
Could have, some Thai food from International Market. If you had Odessa or some of the Kurdish food that's along Nolensville Pike that is so important to that community and to Nashville, but I think visitors don't always get down there. I think that could be amazing.
What would you be absolutely horrified to see in Bridgestone that you think could not translate?
I think we have too much hot chicken. I don't get it. I don't get why anyone wants to eat hot chicken in an airport before they get on an
that's
airplane.
A horrible idea.
It's the worst. I mean, I'm not even anti-hot chicken, and I love the, Prince's story, but why would you want to do that in an airport?
Totally heard.
I also don't want it like in somebody's carry-on next to me.
Yeah, but none of my beeswax, honestly. That's totally fair.
Yep, exactly.
So talking about International Market, that's kind of an interesting one that completely closed and then reopened across the street. This is a generational reopening?
It is. So International Market was a long time Belmont area kind of steam table restaurant. Patty Mint was famous in town, beloved in town for her Thai food. It was nothing fancy, only open for lunch. And it was another place where you could find anyone there. And it was super welcoming. And she retired and has since passed away. And her children, including her son Arnold, who is a nationally or internationally known chef. He's been on Top Chef. He's about to go on Chopped. He and his sister opened International Market across the street from the original International Market. It's a beautiful building. During the day at lunch, the food is very similar to what you would have eaten at the old school International Market. And then at dinner, it's a completely different menu, and it's so unbelievably delicious and creative and upscale. And sometimes they'll do a little special where they'll include something that was their mom's special recipe. But even when they don't, I mean, Arnold has cooked his whole life and learned, from his mother. And so she's a part of those recipes. And I think it's such a great example of somewhere that's modern and new, but also connected to Nashville's past.
If you were picking where you're going to go for dinner, why would you pick a historic institution or an old school spot over a new opening?
There's that sort of, I mean, it's a little bit cheesy, but that thing that people, everyone knows your name. There is something fantastic about walking in somewhere like Brown's, like to sit there and to run into people and have these really comfortable conversations. I want it to be specific to what it is. I want it to be unique. When you walk into any of these places, you cannot be anywhere else. That's a feeling I like versus some of these other restaurants that are great and make great food and have probably better service, but they could be anywhere. And sometimes I can't even remember. My dad makes fun of me a little bit because I love a hipster restaurant. And at one point he said, why does every restaurant you like to go to have the exact same napkin? I was like, oh, they do all have that cream colored napkin with the blue stripes, right? 100% they all do. Hipster napkin. So there is something to that a lot of them are the same, and it can be kind of hard to remember.
I'm going to be paying attention to my napkins for the rest of my life now. That's incredible. So for some of these places with perhaps what would be considered an outdated ambiance, perhaps a lack of AC, is there some merit in kind of working for it that makes the experience better or more meaningful?
I mean, it's a better story. I think people think that's fun. When Prince's Hot Chicken used to be on the east side, they didn't have AC. I ate there several times when there was no power, just sat there in the dark. They had a kind of vending machine for drinks. And it definitely did feel like you were going through a lot to get this amazing hot chicken. It was fun to take people from out of town there because it was an experience and they would get to go home and tell their friends about that. But honestly, now that Prince's is somewhere that has air conditioning and has beer, it's a more comfortable place to hang out and eat. But one of the things that Brett talked about in the Brown Steiner story is if you walk inside, I don't think you really notice that it's any different. It looks the same. It's got the same art on the walls. Or same photos on the wall. It's not really spiffed up, but the roof is not leaking. So, hey, that's an improvement. Like we can all like places that feel kind of divey and one of a kind, but we also we don't need to have the roof leak on our heads or our food.
I don't know. I want the roof to leak on my food personally.
On my
bad meat. I want them to give me a special bad meat burger and have it rain on it.
I'll see what I can find.
What do we want newcomers to know about these institutions? And how do we make sure we aren't gatekeeping old Nashville as something just for longtime residents?
I think about this a lot because when I was interviewing someone for that Browns story, I asked him, why it was important that people know about these historical places. And he said, I'm not sure that it is important. And I was sort of flabbergasted because I think it is important, but also I have no job if it's not important. I don't think you can understand anything or any place if you don't know the context, if you don't know the history. People can go to the celebrity places on Broadway, like they serve a purpose, but those places don't exist without all the other pieces in Nashville. And the more people can understand the city, I think the better it is for the city.
We can't go without change forever as a restaurant or as a city. So how do we evolve responsibly?
I mean, you can't not evolve. Brown's historically was a diner. It was open for breakfast in the 40s. But in recent memory, it's only been open at night. And so now it's open all day. They serve breakfast. They just got a liquor license, so they have cocktails. I think one of the things that we can do is be really thoughtful about what that evolution is. You're not upgrading it or increasing the price or making it fancy just because there was some fancy burger on Instagram or TikTok or wherever people are looking at burgers. But because there's some reason with your mission that it makes sense.
So if you're going to send someone on a day trip in Nashville, we need to give them an itinerary: breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks.
I mean, this is an obscene amount of food, right? So breakfast at Waffle House. I go lunch at Kisser, which is one of the newer places, and it's lunch only. So, of course, you have to go there. Dinner, I would go to Butcher and Bee.
Also a good one.
I love that place. That's my go-to. And I think that's a good example of, obviously, it's upscale, but it's also super welcoming and kind of low-key. And then I'd probably go to Pearl Diver for cocktails.
So we're staying in East, basically, for this.
You stay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm biased. I'm very biased. But that's nice in terms of the driving around.
Yeah.
We'll do a specific one for every neighborhood eventually. Thank you so much for being on. We loved having you. We're going to have you back, obviously. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. This was so fun.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Let us know if you check out some of these restaurants. We'd love to hear what you think about them. And if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye!